So you know who I am, and you still want to challenge me. Bad decision.
All right, first thing we gotta address here is the 2003 anime. Are we using it? Is it canon? Will I be finding a way to make it canon? Not really. But I will be making all of the video games canon. As for how the 2003 anime fits into all of this, the spirit of the video is to make these games canon to the original core story, right? So that's the manga, Brotherhood, manga hood, some people like to call it, even though Brotherhood also isn't exactly like the manga, but it's Fullmetal Alchemist is complicated. The manga is first and foremost what we're trying to align with here. Then if we must, we'll use Brotherhood. And then at the very, very like last resort, you know, the 03 anime, it makes no sense whatsoever. The first like beginning section of the story is close enough to the source material, but it does add a lot of filler. It reshuffles some story events. So as a last resort, we're gonna use that as like a sort of get out of jail free card, because again, the pace is a lot slower. We aren't using dreams in this video. The dream cards are off the table. If you've seen any of my other videos, no what if scenarios, no alternate timelines. We are truly staying on topic. So leave a like, first of all. Equivalent exchange, obviously. Grab a snack, enjoy your lunch. I found out people watch these while they're eating. So, you know, comment down below what you're having for lunch today or dinner. You know, comment down below what you're snacking on today. And enjoy me overthinking way too much about stuff that casual fans do not give a shit about. Let's get started. This game starts off showing us Edward and Alphonse on the train headed to Central City, along with Major Alex Louis Armstrong. If you know the story of Fullmetal Alchemist, this instantly tells us that this game is meant to take place somewhere between Chapter 9 and Chapter 10 in the manga, after the first Scar fight, after the Nina incident. Fortunately, there's a lot of fast travel in the manga and in Brotherhood as well. In both adaptations, we literally jump cut from that one scene where Ed and Al say goodbye to Resin Bull one final time. You know what I'm saying? Goodbye, home planet. We jump straight from that to the three of them already in Central City. That gives us plenty of off-screen time. Without pixel scaling, it's not that deep. We can all agree that Amistris is based on early 20th century Germany, yes, because they have a Führer and stuff like that. A train ride from Berlin to Paris, that would take around a train ride from Central City from the east, we can say took around maybe like half the time, because it's only halfway across the country. Berlin to Paris is like kind of sort of the size of Germany, not really. That's a pretty reasonable estimate, right? I said all that to say that I don't even think this was a straight train ride. You know, I did all that work for nothing, because it doesn't even matter. Arakawa might have made it look like this was the same day they arrived in Central at the start of Chapter 10. But I mean, the country is very much in a state of disarray at the moment. The likelihood of more than one train hijacking is not all that crazy to believe. And then B, there is no narration box, no text box with a duration of time in it to confirm any of this. So I'm taking this one all the way to the grave. This could be tomorrow. This could even be a few days after they leave Resin Bull. It makes no difference. Why does it not really make a difference? I'll explain why as we get deeper into the video. Don't you touch that dial. At first, I was thinking this game only lasted like a day, because Ed definitely did spend the day at some point working with Professor Azelstein before all of his secrets unraveled. And, you know, the whole final battle, I'm thinking, happened that very same night. But then I noticed at the very beginning of the game, when Ed crashed the train into Heathgart, the main setting of this game, it's sunset. So that means that they would have had to have spent at least a night in Heathgart, because Ed did spend that day getting to know the professor as well as his daughter Harmony. Either way though, this could still totally happen somewhere between chapters 9 and 10, somewhere in the white space, the white void between the panels, right? And the final cutscene specifically of this game, that can happen during this establishing shot at the start of chapter 10 of the Central City train station before Ed announces his arrival, which we aren't able to see nor hear this entire cutscene because the camera here is zoomed out too far. You know what I'm saying? This is some fire artwork though. I mean, like, let's be real. Stray Rondo. This one got me sweating already. This is implied to be the first thing that Ed and Al do after taking down Cornello. We get a whole reenactment of it and everything, right? Then they're supposed to go to the coal mines. Then the train gets hijacked by Bald, which is what leads to Mustang giving Edward the Tucky files. The aftermath of that, that's how the Elrics meet Armstrong and Lieutenant Colonel Mays Hughes. However, in this game, we skip over the coal mines entirely, which sucks. I really like that episode. Straight to when Bald hijacks the train. Except in this version, Mustang doesn't show up, and Ed and Al, they instead end up rescuing this girl with some sort of weird healing alchemy power who is being held as hostage. Then they take her back to Central City with them so that she can become a state alchemist, and they somehow already know Armstrong and Hughes. So that must mean that the first Scar fight and the Nina incident did actually happen. I guess you could say this just took place after that, but the problem with that is that Armstrong isn't in this opening cutscene. He, of course, after the Scar fight, he escorts Ed and Al all the way back home and then on their trip to Central. Then Ed and Al, they stay in Central for a while. Then the Lust and Envy attack. That's when Ed gets injured again. He has to call in Winry, and then Winry starts traveling with them. And by that point, we're just too deep into the story, man, because you got Ling as well. At some point, he shows up. But more importantly, because this game has to happen before Hughes dies, right? Because he's obviously in this game and alive and well. This game also takes a while too, like at least a few weeks. This game is pretty long. It's a good game, but it's a long game. There's a lot of traveling and investigating all over Amistris in this game. There's a huge chimera outbreak that has to be brought under control. It's just a lot, man. It's, you know what I'm saying? Way too messy to somehow shoehorn into the manga or Brotherhood. Unless we say it's a dream, but we're not. Break glass in case of emergency. The 2003 anime, though, this could work. In the 2003 anime, Ed and Al, they investigate the coal mines after the Nina incident. And the first battle with Scar is postponed as well, all the way until still after the coal mine. For the manga and for Brotherhood, I couldn't really find a spot for this game. But in the 03 anime, I'm thinking this could happen around like right after episode 9. By episode 9, the Elrics would have already met Hughes during the whole train hijacking incident, which in the 03 anime happens on the way to the state alchemy exam instead of after when he's already certified. Hughes is already on the train again, like they make a whole lot of changes. And then, yeah, a couple episodes later, on his way back to Central to make a report on the whole coal mine situation, that's when Ed and Al can rescue Cornish from another sudden train hijacking, and the whole plot of this game can happen. Again, the game is a tad long, but, and this is kind of referring back to what I was talking about in the previous one, where, adding stuff to the timeline shouldn't really affect things much. This is because the only time-sensitive thing we really have to worry about in this entire story is the Day of Reckoning, or the Promise Day, whichever way you want to name it. And that's still like a whole year from when all of this is supposed to be happening, around the time that Ed first becomes a state alchemist. Spending a week or two, or even a month, if you really want to stretch it, on this game's whole chimera conflict, it shouldn't affect the story that much, if at all. Then immediately after this is all over, Ed can suddenly remember about Dr. Marco, and all that can continue. The only problem still left unsolved after all of this is how the Elrics and Armstrong know each other in this game, despite not having met yet in the 03 anime, which is what I'm basing this on. Some point around episode 9, they don't meet until episode 14 though. I feel like we could just chalk this up to clout. Everyone in the military was made aware of the recent christening of the Mustang's protege, the Fullmetal Alchemist. Oh my God, right? And I'm sure Ed and Al, during their time spent in Central doing the exam, they probably heard some stuff about Armstrong. He's a pretty remarkable person, to say the least. So yeah, in this game, both parties know about each other, but they still haven't formally worked together quite yet. Well, at least until you end up recruiting Armstrong for the big Chimera extermination, which, yes, I am aware would make Armstrong's accompaniment with them back to Resin Bull after the first Scar fight their second encounter in the story, which might be a little bit controversial. But I mean, it would be under different circumstances because Armstrong in this game wouldn't have known yet about the full backstory of Edward and Alphonse, because Mustang only tells him all of that after the first Scar fight, which hasn't happened yet. For this game, we don't need a 2003 anime. This actually takes place while Ed is still at home getting fixed after the first Scar fight. How does this affect the Laboratory 5 incident? This game is one of those games that start off with the, just a retelling of the original story before it completely detours into its own separate thing. What we have working in our favor here, though, is that the story of Fullmetal Alchemist, it tends to jump around a lot. Again, a lot of fast travel, especially earlier on in the story when there is just a lot of traveling and resting. Inserting a whole side quest like this that happens totally off screen is not out of the realm of possibility. That night that the golem monsters in this game first attack in Resin Bull, that can easily be the same exact night that we see here, Ed getting some good Z's in after he spent most of the day sparring with Alphonse and Armstrong, testing his new repairs. Again though, we do just jump straight from that sparring session to next panel. It's nighttime, and this is when, Alphonse has his little chat with everybody while Ed is asleep. We can just say that this part of the game happens after the sun goes down, before Ed goes to sleep, obviously. Like around dinner time or something. We don't know what time it is exactly in this panel, but we can assume it's pretty late. As for where the whole meetup with Dr. Marco fits into all of this, that can all just happen off screen during the fade to black between Ed and Al leaving Resin Bull again, them magically already at when the screen reappears, debriefing Mustang on the whole Jack Crowley situation, right? So I guess that would make this panel right here cap, because instead of going to Central, they would have to double back to East City, report this to Mustang, and then, that gets handled. If it makes you feel any better, Ed, at the end of this game, he does acknowledge how much of a detour this is. So the game is pretty self-aware. Again, we got spare time. It shouldn't really be that crazy. The Elrics, they take at least a week to look over, the notes that Sheska gave them. That took 5 days to produce already. So this game is a pretty lengthy excursion to this ancient city that they have to explore and uncover the mysteries of, right? So it does take a little while. Like, again, these games all take at least a couple days. However, Lust, Envy, and Gluttony, they actually show up towards the end of this game and they reveal that they've been watching the entire time. What I'm thinking, I'm betting that instead of immediately rushing to destroy the library in Central after finding out that Marco spilled the beans to Ed, because that definitely, we've already established that that happens at some point during this game between cutscenes, Lust simply decided to bet on Crowley that he would be the one to take out the Elric brothers before they could really start digging into Marco's research, only to just kill him later because, he failed, obviously. Lust is absolutely that type of self-indulgent, perverse, this is all just entertainment for Lust. And then after Crowley is defeated, they can then go do what they got to do to prevent Ed from getting the instructions on how to, make a Philosopher's Stone. Again, in Brotherhood, we have no idea how long this scene was where we just jump straight to Ed figuring out that the library was destroyed. But it doesn't really matter, as we previously established, because, again, Promise Day, that's still like a whole year away. What's the rush? Look at Lust. Lust in this game clearly doesn't care. Why not just kill a couple days? Let's see what's going on here in this old city, Libis, whatever it's called. I might not even have to lift a finger. The final game of the goated PS2 trilogy. This one actually might be the easiest of the three. A group of individuals with strange powers suddenly attack this town while Edward and Alphonse are passing through it, and Winry is here. So that means that this must take place after she starts traveling with them in chapter 15. Again, man, this is one of those situations. We see Ed, Al, and Winry board the train to Dubliff. Then it cuts away from them completely for a while to the night that Maze Hughes is murdered. Then enough time goes by where there's an entire funeral service held for him before we cut away again to see what Scar's up to while all this is going down. 2 whole chapters later, we're just thrusted back into what Edward, Alphonse, and Winry are currently doing. They've already arrived at Rush Valley. We have no idea how long it's been. From everything I just broke down, I mean, we can assume that at least a couple of days must pass just to organize the funeral, if nothing else. You could argue that this might happen before the funeral takes place, and, you know, we just kind of see the funeral in advance, and then we kind of go back in time to see what Ed, Al, and Winry were doing in the meantime. I'm not going to. Argue about it in the comments if you really feel that strongly. And also, the 3 of them are walking at the start of that chapter. So again, man, like, who knows how far away the train station was? Kiss. Keep it simple, stupid. We can simply say that Valdola, the name of the town that was attacked that I mentioned earlier, the main setting of this game, you know, they obviously stop in this city before they reach Rush Valley because Winry is just a girl and wants to go shopping. All the way in the north, it looks like. Oh my God, is that snow? As for explaining the military's involvement in all of this, specifically Mustang's involvement, because, you know, again, this game does take a couple of days, the investigation and everything. A lot of it is detective work, right? It takes a fair amount of time to uncover all these mysteries, as well as taking down the big bad Zelgius and his entire cult, elemental guardian priest monsters. Realistically, it does take time for these things to be handled right properly. Again, man, Arakawa's pacing really bailing me out here because Mustang had plenty of free time after Hughes's funeral, right? Waiting around for his transfer out of the East and back to Central City. After the funeral happens, we don't see Mustang again until all the way when Ed and Al finally start training with Izumi. And this will be days after Rush Valley, which in and of itself takes place an ambiguous amount of time after the funeral, we could say. Mustang kind of shows up towards the end of this game anyway, so I'm thinking like the funeral probably happens around the same time Ed and Al and Winry first arrive in the city, and then a couple of days are spent uncovering the secrets of Verida. And then towards the end of the game, Mustang could catch word of it. This game could easily just be one final crackdown for Mustang alongside his protege before he gets transferred and goes all in on his internal investigation of the military. The next 2 games are like all but confirmed to be canon. There is a bonus chapter by Hiromu Arakawa herself. This is basically the prologue to this game in volume 23. That's like around the Promised Day section of the story, but here we cut back to Ed's time in Central City earlier on in the story, still searching for Dr. Marco's research. I decided to include them anyway because, you know, they were only released in Japan, so I know a lot of people don't know about them. I didn't even know about them until I watched a YouTube video deep diving into all of the more obscure FMA games. Quick recap: after discovering that the lab had already been destroyed by Lust, Ed and Al, they then have to rely on the librarian, Sheska's insane memory to transcribe everything that she remembers from Dr. Marco's books. This takes her around 5 days to do. This is plenty of time, right? For there to be a whole festival held in honor for this foreign prince from a neighboring nation coming to visit, and then the Elrics exposing his obviously evil scheme. Again, takes at least a couple of days. And the city itself also does sustain quite a bit of damage in this game towards the end. Plenty enough time for all of this. I'm thinking the festival begins the very next day after Ed and Al arrive in Central. After they leave talking with Sheska, they could find a flyer about it somewhere posted up in the city. The festival happens the very next day. Mustang and Edward, they end up getting arrested during the festival, but that's okay because they also break out that very same night. Another day is then most likely spent doing more investigating and getting affairs in order for the big final confrontation. And then the final battle happens that night, again, the day after the festival, while Sheska is busy finishing up with, rewriting all of Dr. Marco's notes. The only issue here is that Winry is in town for this festival. Despite just saying her goodbyes to Ed and Alphonse, I feel like Ed could have just given her a quick phone call. Hey, it's an event happening. Winry looks it up, looking at all these other girls' reactions to the prince in the bonus chapter. She immediately rushes to buy some train tickets because, oh my god, he's hot. After this, Winry, I guess, goes back home again. The Elrics can get the research documents, which they then spend a whole other week afterwards trying to decipher. This gives plenty of time, you know what I'm saying? Winry could easily just double back after like a week or so to fix up Edward again, and it wouldn't be that awkward. We've already established that these train rides don't take very long. This game honestly could be what makes Winry come to the decision. All this back and forth is just a little bit too much. I might as well just stay with them. All them train tickets starting to add up. And we're ending this video off with another fairly easy one because this is supposed to be a direct sequel to Prince of the Dawn that's supposed to take place around a similar time frame. It's really more kind of like a part 1 and part 2 of the same game if you're a One Piece fan, like the Unlimited Cruise video game. But yeah, so if you add in the events of this game as well to that 5-day down period waiting for Sheska, I feel like it should all still be fine, right? We might have like one less day for reconstruction. Or you know what? You probably could just do that outside in the background that we just never see, rebuilding the city up while Ed and Al spend that week inside of a room going through notes. Either way, it should be totally fine, is what I would say, but then freaking Greed shows up in one of these clips in the trailer, and now I am totally thrown off. Again, there's like no full playthrough of this game that exists anywhere online, so I have no idea what the context of this is. Oh, you know what? This was just a dream. Not the whole game. The whole uprising can still happen. Alphonse and Elena's relationship can still be a thing. It's just that this cutscene in particular, again, whatever the context about it is, with Greed, just that specifically, that can be a dream. Alphonse's dream, about the events that happened on this day far later on in the story after they meet Ling and he becomes Greed because Al misses his old work. Yeah. I mean, Mei-chan is cool and all, but Al, we know how you was getting down in Central City back in the day, bro. Leave a like. This one was interesting. A bit harder, a bit more difficult in some aspects because, Fullmetal Alchemist is not as long or as bloated as a story. Things are moving fast in Fullmetal. But also easier in some aspects because, again, the story jumps around a lot. The pacing earlier on in the story, it's like days are flying by like that. Let me know what else you want me to do Fullmetal Alchemist related. Maybe we could tackle more of the 03 stuff. Maybe we could talk about the movie. Something like that. Let me know if you want to see me rank anything else. And I already got the next video written. I just got to edit it. So if y'all want to see that one, gotta hit that subscribe button, man. As for right now, I am done. See y'all later. Until next time.
If it's me, I apologize. I'm just high. So sometimes I'll just emphasize. I'm just shy, so I really need to emphasize. After this performance, check my vitals, make sure that I'm still alive. Cause I give it all.